Hi, Dan Stein here, president of FAIR. Remember, you click our subscribe button if you want to get all the great content from the Federation for American Immigration Reform. And we're here today to talk to Congressman Mo Brooks, who, of course, as you know, has been a leader in the fight for immigration reform, border control, border security for his many years in Congress. He's joining us today to talk about those bills. But, before we get started on the immigration bill, I just want to ask him one quick question about the impeachment process we see going on in the Senate right now. Congressman, the impeachment power is one of those fundamental constitutional principles laid out for the Senate in the Constitution itself. And how unifying is it to actually run this impeachment proceeding when almost half the senators do not believe it's a constitutional exercise?
Well, it's very, very divisive on the part of the Socialist Democrats, but they've got an agenda. Part of that agenda, quite frankly, is to divert media attention from the bad things they're doing in the House or the bad things that the Biden administration is doing, by way of example, with illegal aliens and the amnesty and citizenship that Joe Biden wants to advance. So from the Socialist Democrats' perspective, it's a pretty good diversionary tactic because it's done a fantastic job of diverting the news media and the public attention from the really bad things that the Biden administration has done, not just on border security, but on Keystone Pipeline, on undermining women's rights under Title IX to compete in sports against women, as opposed to having to compete against men who pretend to be women, who want to take up that female playing time and female scholarships to colleges and universities. So I think we need to look at the bigger picture. Certainly it's going nowhere in the United States Senate, but I don't think that that is the Socialist Democrats' primary purpose, to get a conviction. There are multifaceted aspects to this, and a big one is diversion of public attention, which they've been extraordinarily successful at, hiding the bad things that they're doing.
How do you think mass immigration is helping push the country towards socialism?
Well, quite clearly, the Democratic Party is not the Democratic Party of my ancestors. By way of example, for over a century, my ancestors were all Democrats, every single one of them, okay? I'm the first Republican in my family. And what the Democratic Party used to stand for is dramatically different from what it stands for today. And I mention that in this context. I don't believe that today's Democratic Party is the Democratic Party. Rather, it is the Socialist Party of America. And the Democratic Party that we've known for over a century, that has been hijacked by the socialist movement. And so we'll have to see how that ultimately plays out. But I think it's taken us into a real bad place.
All right, well, you've got three new bills now. Let's just talk about one of them each very quickly here. Why should Americans be concerned about illegal aliens getting Social Security benefits, and how would your bill address that?
Well, we have finite amounts of money in Social Security. And if you don't have enough money in the Social Security Trust Fund, then typically what happens is you either reduce benefits or you increase Social Security taxes, both of which are bad for American citizens. So it's very important to limit Social Security benefits to American citizens or others who are lawfully entitled to those benefits. And what this particular piece of legislation focuses on more than anything else is it point blank says we are not going to reward criminal conduct by letting illegal aliens who have illegally taken our jobs, illegally received compensation for the work that they have done, be entitled to Social Security benefits for those years of illegal alien conduct and activity. That in turn reduces the amount of Social Security money that is spent on illegal aliens, which in turn frees up money that can be spent on benefits for American citizens, or which can be used as a leverage point to reduce the need to increase taxes on people who work for a living, which of course decreases the standard of living for those who pay the Social Security taxes. So it's very important, in my judgment, not to reward criminal conduct, which is apparently, I underscore the word apparently, what the Biden administration wants to do. And hopefully we'll get some Democrats on board with this legislation. But quite frankly, as you well know, the socialist Democrats, they are all on board with flooding our country with illegal aliens, lawful workers from other countries. Getting back to your previous question, why? Because it's a power grab. The data has shown that people who are born overseas are much more likely to be dependent on welfare which in turn means that they're much more likely to vote Socialist Democrat in elections, which in turn means that the Democrats are all for bringing in as many foreign-born individuals as they can, whether they be lawful or illegal, in order to undermine the votes, diminish the votes, dilute the votes of American citizens who are here already.
Okay, now your second bill deals with a problem at FAIR we've dealt with many years, which is data. The absence of good data, criminal alien removals, apprehensions, status at the time of arrest or intervention. And you briefly talk about that bill as well?
Sure. This is an effort to require cities, counties, and states to report to the federal government better crime data so that we have a division of lawful citizens who committed crime, lawful non-citizens who are in America who have committed crime, and then illegal aliens who have committed crime. One of the biggest reasons, in my judgment, to minimize illegal aliens in America, to try to evict them, is because of the crimes that they commit. The numbers of Americans who would not have been victims of those violent acts but for our porous southern border. By way of example, with the limited crime data that we have right now, we know that on average, each year, roughly 2,000 Americans are dead on American soil at the hands of illegal aliens because of wrong conduct by illegal aliens. Well, we need a bigger picture so that we can make better policy decisions. And the way you get that bigger picture is to require all levels of government, whether it be cities, counties, states, or the federal government, to determine the immigration, citizenship, illegal alien status of people who commit those crimes, those who are arrested, so that we as policymakers can have more information with which to make wiser decisions. So we know about the roughly 2,000 per year dead Americans. What we don't know about are the rapes, the assaults, the robberies, the burglaries, and every other conceivable crime that can be committed. And each year, the FBI submits to the United States of America a Crime in America report that divides criminal conduct on a number of different levels. By way of example, it will identify whether the person arrested is Hispanic or Caucasian or African American or Asian or what have you. Well, why not also divide it based on whether a person is a lawful citizen, is lawfully here in the United States of America as a potential immigrant or a visa holder, or is an illegal alien, so that we can use that kind of data too in order to better determine how much damage is being done to Americans because of our porous southern border.
What do you think the motive is behind parties and people who want to prevent the American people from understanding these consequences?
Well, please understand again that the goal of the Socialist Democrats is to change the American electorate. Now, they're long-term thinkers. To their credit, they've figured out that the more they flood America with non-American born citizens, the better off they're likely to do in these elections, because non-American born citizens are much more likely to be dependent on welfare than are native born American citizens. And so to the extent they can diminish the arguments against our porous southern border, then they can be more successful and open up the floodgates and allowing another tsunami of illegal aliens to cross our border. So it comes down to raw partisan politics on the part of the Socialist Democrats. They want absolute control. As you mentioned earlier, they want to bring in people from around the country who are apt to vote Socialist Democrat. And this is just one of the vehicles. If you can suppress adverse information that would cause American citizens to sit up and take notice and say, whoa, these folks commit far more crimes than the average American does, than the average lawful immigrant in America does. We need to be more aggressive at stopping their entrance into America. That's not good for the policies that the socialists are trying to force on America and American citizenry. And that's why they do not want us, Americans, to have the kind of information that would help us make better decisions, because we have a greater understanding of how much damage is being done by illegal aliens.
Yeah, apparently the truth is dangerous these days. Don't you think that the Biden administration is running a risk politically if everybody can see the administration sabotaging important controls that the Trump administration put in place? Really, isn't the Biden administration going to be politically responsible for the deaths of Americans at the hands of illegal immigrants who come in as a result of Biden's policy changes?
Absolutely, the Biden administration be responsible, but to the extent that the Biden administration is able to suppress how damaging that is, that puts them in a much better position. By way of example, another fatality area that I haven't discussed, but which we ought to, is overdoses on drugs that come across our southern border. We have another 30,000+ Americans each year who die from overdoses from the consumption of drugs that have been smuggled through our porous southern border. So right off the bat, we know because of our porous southern border, we have 30,000+ Americans who are dead each year because of overdoses from illegal drugs that come strictly from across our southern border. And we've got another 2,000 dead Americans each year from illegal conduct by illegal aliens here in America. That kind of data we need to get out. But of course, the Socialist Democrats with their fake news media allies, they're pretty good at not focusing on the things that the American people need to know about in order to make wise election decisions and for policymakers to make wise legislation.
Well, that really raises this last question, which is, at a time of high unemployment and a lot of Americans are hurting, the Biden administration seems to be intent on weakening a number of the labor protection changes the Trump administration put in place. The Trump administration seeks to protect American workers from these predatory foreign labor importation practices, the abuse of the H-1B program, the OPT program, these other programs, the alphabet soup of non-immigrant labor programs that are displacing American workers. You've got a dandy third bill that tries to address that as well. Politically, how can the Democrats not give you a hearing on a bill that you're going to describe for us right now?
Well, let me emphasize something first before I get into the details of the bill. I have graduated with distinction in economics from Duke University, which I would suggest means I know a little bit about economics, supply and demand, and things like that. Anytime you flood a market with any kind of good, and in this case, we're talking about labor, the natural inclination of the market forces is to force the price of that thing down. So if you flood the market with cheap, inexpensive foreign labor, whether it be via illegal alien labor or through the visa program, which is what this bill focuses on, the effect on American citizens is to depress the wages that employers have to pay them in order to attract their labor. And so what the Socialist Democrats have been doing, and they've been doing it, quite frankly, in conjunction with the candidates that are supported by the United States Chamber of Commerce. I want to be real clear about this unholy alliance. It's not just the Socialist Democrats. It is also the United States Chamber of Commerce candidates, because this is the number one policy goal of the United States Chamber of Commerce is to import cheap foreign labor in order to force the wages down that the members of the chamber have to pay to American families who are struggling under very adverse economic circumstances. And so the two of those have combined in this unholy alliance to hurt American families who are struggling to make ends meet. They have hurt American families by taking away job opportunities that Americans may otherwise seek and get. Those job opportunities are now going to illegal aliens or lawful visa holders, foreigners who have come into our country to do the jobs. And then across the board, because of the surge in the illegal alien labor supply, you've had a huge depressing effect on the wages that are paid to American workers. Illegal aliens in particular tend to affect the blue collar workforce, the people who work with their hands. I've seen one study where that's about $2,000 per year in less wages American workers are getting because of the huge surge in the illegal alien labor supply. But at the white collar worker level, it's different. That's the visas, okay? Where you're bringing in college graduates, people who are smart, people who work in offices, in business environments, things like that. That's hurting America's middle class, the college graduates. And so you've got a two-pronged attack by the Socialist Democrats in conjunction with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce to hurt middle and lower income American citizens. And what this legislation does is it tries to help stop that. And it does a number of things in that vein to prevent that. By way of example, if you as a business have fired Americans or are planning on firing Americans, then under this legislation, you can't replace those fired Americans with cheap foreign labor. You just can't do it. I don't care if they've got a visa or not, it's now illegal to do that. Another thing that this legislation would require is if you're going to hire a foreign worker, then you got to pay them more than you would pay the Americans. Now, that seems kind of paradoxical and on the surface unfair to Americans, but it's really not, because it means that the Americans' jobs are going to be protected from what is now a decision, an economic decision by these businesses to fire the Americans who get paid this much, to hire the illegal aliens and visa recipients who earn this much. So the delta is more profit in the pocket of the business owner. That's wrong. If you believe in free enterprise, then you ought to let there be a natural equilibrium point reached by the supply of labor and the demand for labor, and not distort those economics by flooding the market improperly, in my judgment, with both lawful foreign workers, those are the visa holders, and illegal aliens.
Yeah, outsourcing and labor importation are part of the same globalist sort of labor scheme, right? And your bill seems to me politically very valuable. It's an important effort to push back on what the Biden administration is doing, trying to also help preserve some of the important changes the Trump administration proposed, these regulations, which now the Biden administration is putting on hold, and I would assume are planning to repeal. And politically, Democrats used to be concerned about protecting American workers through their labor union support. Politically, how does it help? How does the Republican Party deal with the fact that the Chamber of Commerce, which has normally been an important source of political funding for Republican candidates, it seems to be migrating away to the Democrats on these really wild immigration issues that are really unpopular?
Well, at a 10,000 foot level, way up there where you're looking down, the Chamber of Commerce has become a very big disappointment for those of us who believe in free enterprise. By way of example, during this past election, the Chamber of Commerce support for socialist Democrats was probably critical in keeping Nancy Pelosi, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Rashid Tlaib, and all the others in control of the United States House of Representatives. Many people may not know that, but the United States Chamber of Commerce was endorsing socialist Democrats over Republicans, which in turn meant a lot of money going to those socialist Democrats, which in turn probably prevented us from firing Nancy Pelosi again like we did in 2010. That's the bottom line of what the United States Chamber of Commerce has done. And previously, the Chamber of Commerce supported people who believed in capitalism, people who believed in free enterprise. But now they're in the middle of the political game, and they have made a calculated decision that it is in the better interest of their Chamber of Commerce membership to support the socialist Democrat open borders policy so that all this cheap labor will come in. And basically they're saying, to heck with American citizens. We don't care about you anymore. You're on your own. We're going to hire these foreign workers. We're going to bring in these foreign workers. And we're sorry if you have to struggle, but that's the way it goes. And what I urge the American families to do that are struggling to make ends meet is to fight back in these elections. That's critical. Understand that you're being led down a path that you don't want to be led down, but that's where the Socialist Democrats and the United States Chamber of Commerce are taking you. And we need to reverse that if you, the American citizen, are still going to have the American dream where you can make a decent wage, have a decent living, perhaps ultimately, say if you've gotten one of the skilled trades, particularly in construction, where ultimately you might be the person that owns your own business. And all of a sudden you're extraordinarily successful and you've broken through that glass ceiling and you become prosperous. Well, that's all being denied you right now because you're not getting on that first rung of the ladder, because the employers of today, particularly the Chamber of Commerce membership, they want to hire foreign workers over American citizens. And in America, that's wrong. And I'm elected by American citizens to protect the interests of Americans. So you know where my heart is and you know where my vote is. But unfortunately, in the quest for political power on the parts of the Socialist Democrats, or the quest for more profit come hell or high water on the part of the Chamber of Commerce members, we've got some tough political forces in front of us that we have to overcome if we're going to protect the jobs and the wages of Americans. And I hope that everyone who watches this video will see what's coming down the pike and will join us before it's too late.
Yes, if there's anything we can do to push Democrats to hold a hearing on these three bills will be featured on our website. You can get the information about what's in each of them, one dealing with Social Security and illegal aliens getting those benefits, one dealing with data and getting good data on criminal alien arrests and removals that we don't have now, impacts on you, the taxpayer. And then the last one deals with important labor protection programs designed to ensure that American workers don't get fired, laid off, and replaced with foreign workers, and otherwise tries to restore some sanity to these non-immigrant programs that the Trump administration sought to do, tried to do, but are now being dismantled by the Biden administration. Congressman Brooks, I want to thank you for your leadership. Again, you can get the information on the bills at www.fairus.org. I'm Dan Stein, president of FAIR, and hit the subscribe button for more of our great content. Thank you for joining us, sir. Best of luck.
Thank you.